Hello, hello, it's Black Mountain Talks with you, and we are joined by Diego Exposito, who is an aerospace engineer with a PhD in hypersonic aerodynamics and who has published several papers on theoretical fluid mechanics in world-renowned scientific journals. He has industry experience in artificial intelligence research and works as a consultant regarding advanced technologies. And our today's topic, I will give a short recap. We were talking about artificial intelligence as such the previous time, but today we're going to speak in more details of what artificial intelligence can be used, so the field where we can apply it. Now I'm passing the word to Diego, and I'm also very interested to hear what you're about to tell us.
Well, when it comes to AI, again, as we mentioned in the previous video, it's largely about statistical correlations, clarifying patterns, and in the case of NLP and vision, it's also about emulating human patterns. Now, when you think about it from the business perspective, a lot of companies first start with a scratch idea of what they want to do with AI. They think about ways that AI can be applied to deliver a new service. Again, because we live largely in a service-based economy, is going to be the goal is going to be to serve a human. The idea is floated, some money is put into it, the AI capabilities are examined, and then it is decided whether if the idea is viable or not. So from a business perspective, there's a lot that happens at the initial stage of a concept. Most people are familiar with the idea of AI startup coming out of nowhere and developing a new AI and then getting funding from investors and then monetizing that or become super rich or something like that. But that's not quite how it works. It may be how it works for the people that develop the AIs, which is a very, very specific thing. But in general, most of the initial stages of a business development based on AI starts on the contract level. So a company, an individual pays another individual to try to figure out what they can do with the AI to serve a business need, and then they go and run with it, create a startup if that they find out that idea was viable or not. But a lot of times, because AI is such a weird thing and it evolves so quickly, there's a lot of times when the business idea dies at the contract phase as well, which is why it's better to do it on a contract basis than do it on a startup basis and create a new company each time you're trying to develop a new idea. So just getting into the way that from a business perspective people are developing these services. Regarding applications, as we mentioned, there's machine learning, there's AI, and AI is used largely to emulate the human patterns of behavior. NLP is the one that's being used more effectively due to the fact that it's communication based. It allows you to convey ideas and talk in a semi-logical manners. So the way that people have been using NLP more recently is, for example, virtual assistants, virtual helpers, in anything that has to do with manipulating the information on a very generic basis. That's how it's working right now with online models like ChatGPT and others, just like the Bard AI and the other ones. Now, and from the business perspective, a lot of what is going on now in the field of AI is how to apply that AI for specific cases. So one of the first problems that people started having was how you can create a virtual assistant, but for a GP, for a medical doctor. Now, a medical doctor is not something that you're going to get out of generic AI, because the amount of information that you need is particularly dense. It's particularly technical. So you need to retrain the AI on specific documentation, so that the virtual doctor can speak to someone knowledgeably about medical matters. The way it works is you can use the big models that are provided online, and then have them apply to the documentation to provide a specific answer. So not only on that, but also not only for GPs, but also for like travel assistants or anything that requires specific knowledge of a product. That creates two different type of business developments. The ones that are developing the AIs for generic purposes, and they do the big developing of the AIs, like the ChatGPTs, the OpenAI, the BART, and all of that. And then the other ones are trying to apply it for specific cases. Now, because everything right now is based online, that generates some problem with privacy. So, for example, a sector like defense, or a sector that is dependent on the military, they still cannot use that type of approach very, very well. Imagine, for example, you're using ChatGPT to provide information on specific documentation. So, for example, defense might be interested in a legal analysis of defense-specific documentation. Now, in the private world, you would just have the generic AI applied on that case to give that specific information. However, because you're doing the communication on an online basis, you have security critical issues with that approach. When the AI is going to read the documentation, it's going to be sent to a server, usually in the US if it's an American model, and that is absolutely unacceptable for defense, for military applications. So you have that extra layer of let's say impediments on how the AI can be applied, and a lot of work that is done on a local level is probably going to be in that realm. So somebody like me is not going to compete in developing large, huge models, because I don't have the resources, I don't have the know-how, I don't even have the funding for something like that. I can do the specific application with an online model, but because that is a fairly scalable job, an awful lot of people will have done that as well. So I'm getting into a market that is already very, very saturated. But then if there is an extra layer of difficulty preventing that scalability, like the defense scenario, and also private companies that may have IP, so large aerospace companies like Boeing or Airbus, companies, automaking companies that want to have a very keep a lid on the technical developments. We also have that extra layer, and that is where a lot of AI development is going to happen at the more startup level in different countries. The way that we have to do it is that we have to host an AI. They will have to determine whether if they can host open source AIs or if public AIs, and then deploy on their machines. Now, that has another layer of complications on it. A model like ChatGPT has, I believe it has now trillions of neurons, which is something that is extremely expensive and extremely difficult to host locally, rather than have it communicating online. And that is going to create another type of job, another type of position, which is the data analysis, the data infrastructure expert. He will have to host the AI. They will have to determine whether if the models available online are enough for the task, or they may have to decide to retrain an AI from scratch. Retraining an AI from scratch in general is not it's not the approach that most companies should go with, simply because you need to spend more time and energy into building the AI when there's probably something public that already works for that. Now, you have the hosting problem. You can train the AI. You can do fine tuning, which means you retrain the AI on the specific documentation, or you can do the same approach then with the big AI and have a generic large AI apply on a specific documentation. The advantage now being that you're not doing server communication. You're not communicating information online, so that you've gotten rid of the security issues, and then you finally have something that you could apply for a specific scenario. When it comes to what exactly the problems on which AI are going to be, a lot of creativity involved, as I mentioned.
Wait. Yeah, go ahead. Yeah, it's okay, because video froze for a second. Yeah, you can continue now.
Okay, just to recap, I have explained the business structure around AI, how an AI business idea is kind of like articulated, and how a project is structured around it. Then the question is going to be exactly what is going to can AI can be applied for, and that there's a lot of creativity involved in that. So in the last video I mentioned the protein structure, which is a very fancy phenomenon. Usually, again, the easiest, not the easiest, but the most profitable approach is replacing humans, simply to downscale, to make your company more efficient, or not spend as much money on wages, which is usually what is most expensive in a company, the wages that they have to pay for people. Now, within that scope of replacing humans, there's actually a few difficulties. It's not as easy. You need to, even though you may have an AI already prepared for it, you still need to do some extensive testing to make sure that the AI does not behave in an unexpected manner, depending on the prompts that the user gives. But once that's there, the biggest problem with the AI is the fact that it's what's called enumerate. And enumerate means that it still does not know very well how to do numbers. It still doesn't know very well how to do logical connections. So if I'm trying to replace a job position that has to do just with managing information, and it doesn't involve too many calculations, then that's fine. The AI can maybe do it. For example, booking flights, moving flights, an assistant that helps you with managing, giving that flight support and managing that type of information. That can be done. It still has a few issues, like determining what task to do and making sure that it doesn't do a wrong task, like for example booking a flight that is not suitable, because there's actually money involved there. But assuming that's there, then the next big thing is going to be trying to, if not replace programmers, because it's difficult to replace a programmer, at least help them. And that's, again, what the co-pilots are for programmers. And that's pretty much where the edge is when it comes to applications of AI, because once you have reduced the time and the cost that you that is involved in the iterative design of an AI, you have substantially improved your abilities to create a more powerful AI. So the performance of an AI assuming that we can actually do that and we can actually support programmers with the programming with AI, the capabilities are going to increase probably exponentially because you have more help coming in, more if it's a network effect. Every time you reduce the time by 10%, it's 10% that in terms of programming, it's 10% that you have reduced for each task, and that leads you to a power curve that really shows how big AI can become. And yeah, that's how it is right now. That's where the big thing is. And other applications of AI are doing more fancy. Manufacturing, we mentioned that as well. For example, when it comes to manufacturing, there's a lot of simulations involved. A simulation is taking the equations that are involved into designing a physical process, and then solving those equations to simulate a scenario that you will have in this case in a manufacturing design. This is something that's already standard. It's how car companies operate, how even aerospace companies operate, simulating so that you're not doing as many experiments, you're not doing as many experimental setups in your design process, and that reduces the cost, speeds up the process because simulations are faster than doing an experimental setup. So AI there can come in the form of what I call surrogate models, which is an AI that has been trained on the output of an equation, and that way you don't have to solve the equation every time you are trying to get the output from that equation. So in generic terms, what that means is speeding up simulation process. And speeding up the simulation process means, again, you have improved your iterative loop when it comes to designing. So you have a better chance of designing, in this case, better cars, better planes. So that's where a lot of the AI development is right now. It's in the iterative process.
Mm-hmm. I see. So now we have to do a short recap. So we have that general AI, and on the basis of the general AI, we can train specific AI. Am I correct here?
Mm-hmm.
And so it is. Now we are witnessing all those chat GPT like free application and applications. They are basically used for learning, to train the AI, so it can be used further in more specific fields. I see here. Yes, and if it comes to, say, defense, so is it possible that they take some generally trained AI, then isolate it in a certain area or in certain location? So they take something ready, then they isolate it and then train it in the closed enclosed area. So it's like within only one I don't know, entity or within one ministry. So they have already something which is belongs only to one entity when it comes to security issues. And I was thinking about, say, if we are speaking, if we take branches of application in more detail, so how we can use AI in healthcare or in the same defense. So it depends on types of questions which can be solved by AI. So now it is more of linguistics tasks, and we are planning to move on to make it be more capable of doing calculations. Am I correct here?
Yes, I have to say, because you brought the topic of public health, precisely because we want the AI to improve our design processes and to improve our iterative design and all that. One of the big things, one of the big pushes that we're going to see is for digitalization. The AI cannot work on data that is not digital. It has to be stored somewhere in electronic format. So, for example, with medical data, there's going to be a push to have a lot of your medical data stored electronically, which it probably is already. But the idea is that once you have a profile of a human, you have, I don't know if it's his genetic code, but definitely his blood group, his allergies and things like that. It is possible for developing an AI to develop an AI that is more technical in the sense that it will be able to look at your profile and then recommend the prescription that will be required for a specific ailment that you will need. There are a few issues around it, namely, assuming the patient is describing his ailment correctly, the generic AI being able to interpret whether that is correct or not, and if it's not correct, what the alternative is. So this technical AI that would work on your medical data. It would not be a customer facing AI. It would be an AI that is just used in the background. Digitalization is going to be very, very big. It is, I believe, the reason why probably Elon Musk decided to acquire Twitter. One of the things about Twitter is it has a lot of information in the form of conversations, a lot of small snippets of conversation that are very correlated to events, in the sense that when something has happened, you are most likely you will most likely learn from it first from Twitter, due to its shortened format and how people are immediately uploading something on Twitter. And that correlation between the post and the event is what gives you a very, very high quality data that then you can use to train the AIs. So that's going to be, again, for whichever field you are considering, digitalization is going to be a big part of it as well.
Yeah, and speaking again about public health, if we have, it's my opinion only, but if we have AI for medical purposes, say doctors, it might be as a helper of a doctor, not of a patient, because like when patient comes with different complaints, maybe it will be easier for doctor to like make a profile, so he doesn't have to maybe think of some complicated things, but I can give suggestions to doctors what can be wrong with the patient, but not to the patient, because the patient is incorrect and input data into like some application of what he can get wrong answers. So we're not removing a doctor from process, but we are having AI as an assistant for the doctor, who can maybe spend more time with the talking to patient than to like writing all the profile. Because now when you visit doctor, you have the doctor writing something constantly and doesn't paying attention to the patient. So maybe AI can be of help here. What do you think?
So what happens, it comes down to trust. So it comes down to how big the AI was used, how efficient it is really, and how reliable or capable the doctor is without AI, or even without that AI, and then also how cost-driven the owner of the company that provides the medical service is as well. There is a trust issue, and it comes in a very technical way. It comes down to that testing of the AI and making sure that you have considered all the possibilities, not all, but the most frequent, at least the most frequent possibilities when dealing with a medical problem. What type of AI to use will come down to the company. If they're very cost driven, they want to provide a very, very low cost medical solution to somebody that maybe is just like typing his ailment on the web, maybe they will go full AI. If it's a company with more resources, then maybe they will be able to use a big AI, and then a doctor that knows how to use that AI. Note that are that's a doctor that has two sets of skills: his usual GP background and his knowledge-rich AI, and that drives the cost up as well. So if we come down to what the business case is, you probably have AIs that are used in a more generic or an automated fashion for people, for like average consumers, and then more sophisticated AIs for the people that are willing to pay for that as well. The big thing when it comes to trust, AI has a particularly insidious behavior, which is that it will not tell you when it's wrong. It doesn't know when it's wrong. So if you ask ChatGPT about a specific event or something specific, a specific piece of information that you have information about, the AI could give you a wrong solution and still run with it and not be aware that that solution is wrong. That when it comes to the prescription from the AI assistant, that can be a problem. There is no assessment in terms of probabilities of how wrong the AI can be. We don't have a statistical tool for that, and that can lead to, unfortunately, to very, very bad scenarios where, for example, you will have the company will have assessed the most critical environments in which an AI might be used, but there's a critical one where it has not been assessed. You have a patient that is asking for a specific prescription. The AI gives us a prescription, it turns out to be the wrong one, and maybe even it might even seriously hurt the person. That is a problem. That is probably where a lot of regulation might be coming in, where the government is going to say, well, you cannot use AI for particularly ill patients or for particularly critical cases. And coming back to that specific behavior that the AI has to be trained on, the more specific a case is, the more difficult it is for the AI to give a solution. So if you have a patient that has a very, very weird disease or a very uncommon disease, it is unlikely for a generic AI, medical AI, to provide a correct assessment of that person's needs. And that is even after extensive training on specific information. You're just dealing with a very unlikely case. So that's yet again another problem that we have to address.
Yeah, but it's the same now in without AI. If a person has a very complicated disease, then they have consilium of doctors who just all speak their mind and they decide whether a person has this disease or not. So I was thinking more about it could be a helper to doctor, like virtual assistants. We are using now chatbots in different companies where they just type what kind of problem you have, and on the basis of what person chooses, they are directed to some certain, I don't know, specialist. Or when it comes when contact is post services, then they are asking what are you willing to know about. So is it like delivery costs, or is it delivery terms, or whatever? And so on the basis of questions, they are directed to maybe to a specialist, or if the question is easily resolved, then they are just giving the answers in form of a list or something like that. But what other spheres we can use AI for? So now we know that it's widely used in business to maybe to replace people who are working in in call centers. It's now I have faced it myself already. then when talking about those medical cases, it is now not still clear. But say if we also if we're speaking about maybe development of some new medicines, like where you were speaking about that, when we need to modulate which kind of protein fits like for a certain I don't know, yeah. So it is AI who finds the solutions for this problem.
It's to be honest, if I knew everything that an AI could be used for in a business case, I would probably be a millionaire. We are still realistically we are trying to figure out what AI can be used for. Again, you have to think business wise to think about what it's going to be applied. At the end of the day, the AI is going to be something to help businesses provide a service. It's going to try to replace the workers that do jobs that can be prone to automation. So one of the big ones, you mentioned the call centers. Will have to be a written system, unless maybe you can attach a voice system, then maybe it could work. But that's definitely something that could be automated. You need to look at what the large expenses are for companies and see where they're going to try and cut corners, to put it that way. One of the big ones is everything that has to do with transportation. So taxi drivers, truck drivers, and in general, maybe even planes, but with planes is extra safety considerations. But for example, the limit in that field is the accuracy of the GPS. GPS gives you, depends on which GPS system you use, but it gives you an error. It can give you a minimum error of between 5 and 10 meters. Now, 5 and 10 meters, when you're trying to find locations, 1 kilometer or something like that, it's good enough for even calculating routes and things like that. However, when it comes to driving, you don't want to be driving in a car that doesn't know if it's here or 5 or 10 meters in another place. So right now, that is not coming in yet, even though Tesla is working very, very hard on it. It comes down again to the digital data. You need high quality data, so that's where this is being pushed. But if you are able to remove the drivers, if you're able to replace it, then you can really drive your cost down even further. That's going to be particularly important now that we might get some increase in transportation costs. Same thing with ships. Assistance in shops definitely is definitely something that is going to be automated. These are things that I'm just thinking on top of my head. Another way, for example, that I've seen that we try to develop a product, and this was essentially for nursing homes. So this was to have an AI that would talk with usually a terminally ill patient or a patient that has a particular chronic disease, and it will try to not only help that person in terms of the prescriptions they can give and everything medical related, but also kind of give a companion to try to feel a psychological need. That was a genuine business case that we were trying to consider. I'm sure that maybe psychologists could be, I think, a virtual psychologist, or like a virtual companion. So that's definitely something like that is being explored. Yeah, these are the applications I can think of on top of my head, it's again going down to service economy, driving costs down, and trying to automate as much as possible to try and drive the cost down.
And what do you think can it be interesting for the state to develop, say, I'm coming back to healthcare again, I'm sorry, but it's really like I find it very important field. So is it maybe, can it be interesting for a state to develop like one system which would unite all the, say, hospitals, all the doctors, all the research facilities into one, which could be like users of that specially trained AI to optimize all the processes. So because I see that say in Europe there is problem with shortage of doctors. So to take extra workload from doctors to maybe make artificial intelligence do what it can do, so that healthcare is more human, like human centered again, and all the technical details are dealt with, say, by AI. So it is like a state which maybe could be funding all the thing, and we as users, every one of us, like are the winners here. Do you think something like that possible?
So that actually is more of a political question than it is one about AI. Depends on how comfortable people are with having a very centralized medical system. So from a technical point of view, there is no reason for me to believe that that cannot be done. So it can be done. It would come down to, again, service, probably having a template for how, a standardized template for how that medical information has to be filled in, and then connecting everybody on that system and having the AI, maybe even have a big, large AI in a server and have it serve like the people that are just trying to access to it. Now, that being a political problem comes down a lot to the political system of the countries in consideration. So countries that are more central, for my home country of Spain, that could be done. In countries like Germany or Switzerland, where even the small federal states are very unique and specific in the way that they're doing things, then there could be issues regarding, for example, what that standardized test must look like, or should look like across different states. In fact, in Spain, there is different regions that speak different languages. So how are you going to have standard test for different people that speak a different language? Maybe you can translate it. That, I'm sure that can be done. But then again, from a cultural perspective, is that going to be properly designed? Are politicians going to be willing to offload their medical system? Because the medical system is, depending on the country, it's not only a service, it can also be a business. So if you have a central state that relinquishes their service to a central authority, that's possibly a loss of business as well for that state. It means less investment in the medical infrastructure in that region. It means less funding for hospitals. Not necessarily less funding for hospitals, but definitely less for that patient-facing aspect of hospitals. So comes down to that. What if you are living in a country that is very, very big, has different ethnicities in that country? Then it's more difficult to have a standardized test for every individual. In general, AI likes homogeneity. It likes everything and everybody to be exactly the same in its system. So having a central system is actually something that the AI would prefer, but it is not necessarily something that can be carried out on a political level. Another thing about AI for medical systems that people don't talk about is something called digital twins. The digital twin is the medical profile of a human that has been replicated on the server. For example, if I have my DNA recorded, fingerprints, medical information, and all that, then there is on the server somebody that looks like me or has that medical information, and that can be used for very nefarious purposes as well. Like, for example, targeted biowarfare. So targeted, you can have a country with that information try to target different parts of their population by developing viruses or any bioweapons that can affect one specific genetic profile, one specific individual's profile, and so that's the less benign aspect of AI, but it's definitely something that is being discussed and it's being explored as well, if only for defense purposes. So again, these are comes down to correlations and how you use the AI. It depends on the human.
Yeah, that's true, because when one sees a possibility to make process easier, the other will see the possibility how to misuse the process. So it's yeah, it depends a lot on legislation, and it depends a lot, I think, on human perception too, if they are ready. Say if we're talking about virtual psychologists, so to what extent human is ready to substitute living human with a machine? That's a question too, because as if you are talking to someone, but do you have that human response? Because as far as I understand, people need that human response, not a machine one. So, like, judging by what I do when I need to call like some company or to make some question clear, I would rather search for a human contact. I'm just thinking about that than to like a random bot who will provide faster answers, but it is not like that human contact, because bot is limited only to input and output and nothing in between. So yeah, humans
that's why a lot of applications about AI are eventually going to come down to human decisions, or in the sense that how comfortable people are with having their data on a system. For example, you really have a fairly substantial population of anti-vaxxers, for example, in the US. So here's a scenario where you could have that population deciding not to have their medical data online, and then selective, the ones that want to use it, the ones that don't. But then what if there is like outbreaks or anything that requires to know the medical information of the people that are refusing to be on the system? What will happen if the AI needs to have that information in order to help the people that are registered in the system? So that is not a question for the AI to decide. That comes down to political system. It comes down to ethics. There's always going to be a push against the homogenization and digitalization of AI. As I said before, with digital twins, the fact that you have your medical information on a profile that means that you could potentially be targeted for with that information as well. So it will. There's a lot of ethical implications that have to be decided on a human basis.
That's true. And say when it comes to writing, say articles, because I have like read in the press, there were cases when AI was ordered to write an article, and it provided really like credible texts, even better than some humans could produce. But it's also, I think it is also must be a subject of reviewing by a human editor if it goes to like a newspaper or something like that.
it is unlikely to, well, at this stage, again, the problem, the fact that an AI is enumerate gives a lot of issues. You will not, in general, find a particularly good article written by an AI. I am not aware of any AI written scientific paper that has not been plagiarism, literally just copying somebody else's results and rewriting the paper. So that's not, it's not a problem in the sense that it's going to come down to to credibility, or to the credibility that the reader gives to the piece. So it could definitely be, the AI could be used to generate a lot of what you consider homogeneous information. And homogeneous information means I have a paper, I have an idea, and I want that set of ideas to be propagated. I can use AI both for the propagation of that information and for the rephrasing of that information, so it looks like there's a number of outlets of journals that are agreeing on that specific idea that I'm trying to promulgate. Now, that will go on to show you that really what's called certification by consensus, which is the idea that an idea is correct because a lot of people are agreeing with it, is going to be completely dead. In an age where you can fake consensus by just having AIs run with the same piece of information again and again and again. This also comes back to a point I made in the previous video, which is on social media. You're going to have a lot of bots on social media. You're going to lose the human aspect of social media, and if you're going to be on social media to interact with bots, you're going to question the whole purpose of being on social media. So on the information front, that is definitely another there's going to be another set of issues on that side. Right now, those issues are not, the AIs are not developed enough for information for information to be used for like propaganda purposes and everything like that. Bots are fairly easy to detect on places like Twitter. You can detect when somebody is an AI just by the shallowness of the lack of depth of their answers. So it's not really a problem. The big problem is the credibility that you want to give to an opinion piece that has been written. But that's a problem you already have with humans as well. Even if a human writes a particularly good piece of information for a journal, the fact that the logic is right does not mean the assumptions are. So you can have a brilliant paper written in a very complex, in a very detailed manner, but because the assumptions are wrong, it fails to map on reality well. So that has not, right now AI has not changed substantially the information, quote unquote, war, if you want to say it that way, but it does create, it can create more consensus than it looks like. So it's people will have to be careful with that.
That's true. And I had like one idea, I think it can be used as a summarizing tool. And in fact, I've seen the bots. I've seen myself that there is like on Telegram we have summary bot, which provides a short a recap of final 50 commands made. But it also depends on accuracy, how that bot works, how it is trained. And say if there is a 3 hours long lecture recorded, so is it possible like for a student to use AI to have a summary of that lecture? But on the other hand, is that summary is really what was inside the lecture? Did AI capture the idea what lecture was talking about?
Depends on how complex the AI is. I would say that at this stage, it struggles. The AI generally struggles with specific information and the logic. If you have a 3 hour 3 hours worth of information from a lecture, assuming that the lecture is already going to be something very specific, the AI is unlikely to be good at writing a summary. What it could do well is play with what it's going to do. It's going to play with the terminology that has been used in that lecture, and it's going to scramble it in a way that makes sense based on public information. So it might look, for example, say you have a lecture about a specific tribe. It's an anthropology lesson, and it's about a specific tribe and the way that the members of the tribe interact, the way that culture is passed down, children and things like that. What the AI is going to do is going to take the terms and is going to fill in with the properties of a generic tribe that we would find on Wikipedia, or they would find in a generic source of information. So you're going to get a summary that probably does not it is not representative to the piece of data that has been summarized. I have done that myself a lot of times. The testing for scientific papers, it struggles immensely. It's really bad. What it is better at is lists. Right now, it can do, if you ask it to summarize based on lists, on a sentence basis, it is performing better than on a paragraph basis. So it can find similarity between sentences and remove the sentences that are very similar to each other. So if you have for example, the lecture or even a paragraph, if there's a lot of sentences that don't add information to the paragraph, it will just remove the sentences and take the ones that do have the specific information. It is in the interpreting of that information where the AI struggles. So it can be, I would say it can be used for lists, but not for more detailed explanations of any particular complex piece of information.
So when it comes to 3 hours long lecture, I can just make a list and decide whether it is worth attending or not afterwards.
Well,
Because
you have to
hours.
know if the information represented there is accurate or not, and you're going to need somebody else that has sit through the 3 hour lecture to know.
I see.
So how can you judge the accuracy of a piece of information when you are missing the context?
Yeah, that's true. But I was thinking about topics covered. I know that they are going to speak about certain topics, and if I'm not interested, I just skip. But on the other hand, lecture already provides lists of topics. So yeah. So now, so as what I understood from our discussion, now we are having a tool and we're trying to develop that tool, but we are not really, how to say, we don't really understand how to put it in use.
We're figuring out how to put it in use, and even though here we talk about generic matters, when it comes to the front end development of the AI, it all comes down to hardware. The reason something like ChatGPT exists is because we have something called clusters, which is like amalgamations of computing units, GPUs. We have a lot of them gathered in one place with a lot of energy and a lot of cooling going into them, and that generates ChatGPT. Back 10 years ago, 20 years ago, it was not possible to do that. The technology was not there. So the development of the AI, of the applications of the AI, not only comes from the creativity of finding out where to apply the AI, but it comes down to the hardware that is being developed for the AI. That's why there is such a war when it comes to microprocessors and such controversy with microprocessors. Right now, best ones you can probably find them in Taiwan, and that gives a lot of issues. But the most important developments in AI are at the hardware level. That's where we will know in 10 years, 20 years from now, whatever AI has been developed, it will be an AI that has been developed thanks to advances in hardware. Microprocessors was one thing. Another thing is quantum computing. Quantum computing can give you particularly fast calculations that, again, you go and put into an AI, so then you have substantially bigger model. What does something like ChatGPT look like when its number of neurons has been increased by 10, by 100, by 1,000? How does the quality of performance change? That we don't really know due to the fact that AI is iterative. Again, it's something that is developed as part of a design process, and we don't know what it's going to look like in several years from now, but it will come down to hardware.
So I see now I see this process as like more like of human interest. So we are testing what we are, as humans, are capable of, and we are like trying to, yeah, and we are training that AI, and it drives the technology further, and then technology further drives the AI further. So it's like something which step by step, like we are going to technological civilization and some more achievements. Oh, I think, yeah, I think it's an interesting topic, and I would like also to know about maybe space, how it can be used for, say, if we want to colonize other planets. Is it applicable, or it is also for now it is some kind of fantasy, science fiction, or?
I would say the use of AI for space applications is more a technological. Again, you can use the AI for the design processes, as we mentioned before, and well, that means better rocket engines, potentially better fuels if you can change that. And then it will come down to the automation of those space systems. I think it is unlikely that for AI to be extensively used in space systems, due to the fact that for AI to be reliable, you have to test it a lot in an environment that you think is going to mimic the environment that you will have in the deploy stage, in the stage where the AI is actually used. And due to the fact that you're going to other planets, the conditions of which you're unlikely to be able to recreate on Earth, that means the AI does not have a good environment to be tested. On that specific environment. Now, here AI is being used as a concept very theoretical, very abstract. AI will be used for control systems, for when to deploy solar panels, how to manage them, how to manage the cooling system, the water recycling system. So those things will definitely exist. AI in the form of data management, I think, is more unlikely unless the space system goes in with Wikipedia kind of drive in it, and I don't really see why the purpose of that would be, other than maybe technical information for space, for astronauts, if they need something to be repaired. But chances are that they will have been trained on that documentation pretty extensively already. So AI for space, I only see it relevant right now for the manufacturing stage and for the control of the control systems.
Yeah, I see. So yeah, but we will see in 10 years what we are capable of. Yeah, and I think we will be finishing for today, but I'm really waiting for our next meeting, because it's really interesting, and I like to dispel the myths around AI, because people are sometimes scared, and they think that they will be replaced by intelligence, and people, yeah, and many people are, not many people, but there are concerns within certain circles and population that their data is being like put in the computers, and people are against. So some are pro, some are contra. So then it makes us human after all. We are not AI, and maybe that's good. But see you next time. Thank you very much for your time. It was very insightful, and yeah, see you.
Thank you for having me.
Thank you.